Now, in the 4th century, Zoroastrianism becomes the state religion of Iran. We have Shapur II here, who mints coin. It is during his period, and as I mentioned to you before, he adopts the crown of his ancestor Shapur I, the crenellated crown. And on the reverse, you see these two figures that have become a bit more stylized, quite a bit stylized compared with the early ones on either side of the kingly fire. And the inscription on, by this time, of course, has been extended on the obverse to the King of Kings of Iran and non-Iran, Iran. And on the reverse, it's still the same concept of, you know, the fire of Shapur. We don't have at this time any date, you know, on these coins. That comes much later. And here is a relief of probably, yeah, you know, it is Shapur II at Tagh-e-Bostan near Kermanshah, where he is standing on the body of the defeated Roman king. Now, the question is often, which one is Shapur and which one is not Shapur? Certainly the figure on the far left is Mithra, with standing on a lotus flower and holding a balsam bundle. And it's very interesting that this image of Mithra with his radiate crown becomes then the image of Zarathustra in the Sasanian and in the Zoroastrian 19th century iconography. So they pick the wrong deity. And, you know, to this day, that's the image that is being used by the Zoroastrians in Iran and passes in India. But the question is, you know, is the figure in the middle Shapur and the figure on the right Ormazd, or is it Shapur sharing the diadem with his brother Ardashir II? And, you know, there is no agreement about that, but I think it's Shapur and Ardashir celebrating the victory of Shapur II. Now, it's interesting that at times of upheaval, this sort of symbolism on Sasanian coins is really very much emphasized, and sort of you bring in a sort of a flame, Zoroastrian flame or kingship, or for example, you have, you know, in the case of Jamas, you have these, the king facing a little figure who is probably the personification of perhaps Khwarna offering a diadem to the king. It's interesting how this sort of, at times of turmoil, this sort of iconographic imagery is revived and brought in. And this is, of course, best seen, I think, for example, with coins of Piruz, who has 3 different types of crowns which can be related or linked with internal problems. And his succession is the problem that he had after his succession to the throne after his father Yazdegerd II, and also his encounters with the Heftalites in the east. Crown 1, as you see on the far left, is made up of a cap and a globus and a moon crescent and diadem, and the name and royal title K. Piruz appears on the obverse on the right hand side. Now, this type of crown is only known from years 1 and 2, and I have to add that by this time you do get the regnal years of the king on the left hand side or right hand side of the coin. And you also start getting by now the mint abbreviation. You know, they were more than 50 mints in the Sasanian Empire, but they did not write the name of the mint in full, but they used abbreviations, which causes actually problems, because with some of them we're not absolutely certain, and there are many different interpretations. But it's interesting that then after a while there is a second type of crown, as you see in the middle, where it's similar to the first crown, but the cap is abandoned, and these coins are minted between years 2 and 8. And then it's interesting that in connection with these coins you also find the letter Mim in the middle at the bottom, probably standing for Malka or king, emphasizing the sort of royal side of Piruz. And then crown 3 on the far right side is shows an added pair of wings, which symbolize victory, and this is important because probably it's the coin that it's the type of crown that it was introduced after Piruz was after he got into trouble with the Hephthalites, and he was only captured when a huge ransom of 30 donkey loads of silver was made to the Hephthalites. And it is probably after he was released from captivity in 467 that he then adopted this new type of crown. Now the winged crown becomes, of course, a prominent feature of late Sasanian coins. We can see here. Here is Piruz, and then Khosrow, Ardashir, Buran, and Yazdegerd III, just to show you some of the late Sasanian coins. Khosrow adopts this type of crown, Khosrow II, after year 3, and by this time you have clearly, as I mentioned, you have the regnal year, the the year that the king rules. It starts from year 1 until his death or until he's deposed. And you can sort of date these coins. Now, and there is also another element in these coins on the obverse to the left side, behind the figure or the portrait of the king. You have the phrase Khwara Absud, may his glory increase. So again, a sort of emphasis of the royal side of, or the legitimate side of the royal, of the monarch. Now, the question that inevitably springs to mind is, who were these religious symbols meant for? The ordinary population or the aristocracy? It is unlikely that the ordinary subject in the realm of the Sasanian king ever came close to, in close contact with silver coins, and certainly never came to see or touch gold coins. The iconography of the more commonly used, much smaller copper coins was the same, but because of the very much smaller size of the so-called small change, it was not easy to identify the messages and symbolism. In view of this, it is reasonable to assume that the iconographic messages were really intended for the aristocracy. We have to consider that it took Ardashir I, more than 20 years to consolidate his position from his succession to his brother Shapur in 205-6, until the Battle of Hormozgan in 224, and another 4 years until AD 224, when we have evidence for the last Parthian coins in Mesopotamia. This indicates opposition to the Sasanian aristocracy from the Parthian aristocracy, which is hardly surprising after 400 years of Arsacid rule. After the consolidation of power under Ardashir and Shapur, a period of internal unrest caused by a struggle of power seems to have set in. This rivalry is particularly noticeable under Shapur's sons and grandson, Bahram I, Bahram II and Nasir, and ends with the victory of Nasir over his great-nephew Bahram III. It is in this political context that the early Sasanian kings used religious symbolism to present themselves as the true possessors of the divine glory, the Far, and justify their kingship not just to the Parthian aristocracy, but also, and their external enemies, but also amongst themselves. The early Sasanian kings continued with the Parthian tradition of divine support for their rule, but instead of the Hellenistic-inspired iconography of the Parthian period, the Sasanian kings used symbols of Zoroastrian Iranian divinities for propaganda purposes. Ahura Mazda, or Mazd and his helpers, the Yazata, Mithra, Anahita, Varathragna, and also perhaps Ashivangui, chose Ardashir and his clan to rule over Iran, and symbols such as the Varegna bird, mural crowns, birds, animal crowns, and crowns with vegetations all emphasize the divine glory of the victorious God-chosen king. The Sasanian king was chosen by Ormazd and divine beings. While all Sasanian kings incorporated symbols of the Far or Khwarna, each ruler seemed to have his personal patron deity. Bahram I and II are closely associated with Varathragna and Mithra, and then, for example, Nasir, we know from his inscription, closely associates himself with Anahita. Now, religious symbolism and repeated allusions to divine kingship retain their importance throughout the Sasanian period. We have seen how Piruz, whose turbulent reign included a quarrel with his brother Ormazd III and his captivity by the Hephthalite Huns, wore 3 different crowns. Now, the third and final crown, adopted after his release, has the symbols of the victorious god Varathragna and the Khwarna. And the victorious crown, as I mentioned before, becomes the wing crown becomes until the very end of the Parthian period, until the Sasanian period, until the time of Yazdegerd, the sort of symbol of Sasanian coins, as you see, and also continues even in the Islamic period under the Arab Sasanians and also the Ispahabads of Tabaristan, so it doesn't disappear altogether. But I just want to close with drawing your attention to one particular symbol that occurs on all these late Sasanian coins, and that is the moon and the star, the crescent moon and the star, which has become the sort of the Islamic symbol, but I always point out that it goes to the Sasanian period, actually Parthian period, because they appear on for the first time on Parthian coins. So thank you very much.